We're gonna keep it hard today. Go hard or go home. It's already giving me goosebumps. And I didn't even start the story yet. The United States would enter World War II on December 8, 1941, after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. At that time, Joseph Beyrle was a senior in high school in Michigan, and he had a scholarship to go to Notre Dame University when he graduated. But when he graduated, he changed his mind. He said, "I'm a patriot. Patriots live here." And he would enlist in the army instead. He also volunteered to one of the most dangerous units, the parachute infantry. In 1943, Joseph would complete a very intense training for the parachute infantry, and then he would be stationed in England. He would then volunteer to go on a very dangerous mission that the OSS was recruiting paratroopers for. The OSS is the predecessor to the CIA. The OSS would tell the volunteers this is one hardcore undercover mission, and if you get caught, you will be tortured and finished off, meaning killed. And Joseph would still volunteer and go. Basically, this mission was to parachute into the middle of the night with a backpack full of gold into Nazi-occupied France. And once you hit the ground, you look for the French resistance and you give them the gold, and their job was to protect you until you finish the mission. And if you're still alive after the mission is completed, they would drive you back to England. Once Joseph completed his second OSS mission, his unit would get word that D-Day is taking place on June 6, and his unit would parachute a night before into Nazi-occupied France to get it ready for the invasion that will be taking place in Utah Beach. You know, cut some power lines, destroy some bridges, the works. On June 5th, in the middle of the night, Joseph's plane flew over France. But bad news, the Nazis saw it and struck it down. And as the plane was crashing down just 400 feet above the ground, Joseph would jump out of it with his parachute and land on top of a church. Thank God. But bad news, a Nazi sniper would see Joseph and start firing at him. And Joseph would dodge all these bullets like a rattlesnake. Oh, whoa, whoa, that was a close one. Once he dodged all the bullets, he jumped off the church and did the smart thing. He hid. I would have done the same thing. Once the coast was clear, Joseph would get out of hiding and do a crazy, one-man mission that was so incredible that the church that he landed on actually put a plaque up for him that looks like this. Joseph became a crazy man, firing at all these Nazis, throwing grenades all over the place. Then he would see the town's power substation. Guess what? He would bomb it! Then he saw a bridge. He said, if only I could reach that bridge and destroy it. The Nazis can't send reinforcements. Time out. Like and subscribe. God bless you. Do me right. I wouldn't do you guys wrong, and you know it. Let's go back. Time back in. Joseph was hardcore. Once he had destroyed that town's sub-power station, the town had a complete blackout. There was no electricity in the town at all. But As he was going to bomb that bridge, he would fall into a Nazi machine gun nest head first. And when he got back up, he would see all these machine guns pointing at him. He would then do what I would do. Surrender. Joseph would march deeper into France to a POW holding area. But once he got there was explosions all over the place! It wasn't clear if it was German artillery or American aircraft, but whatever it was killing both the Germans and Americans. And Joseph would be blown away! He would fall into a ditch. And he would say, "Am I still alive? Am I still alive?" He couldn't believe it. Then he would get up and hide behind enemy lines for 12 hours. Then he would get caught again. The Germans would put Joseph into a covered truck and take him to Saint-Lô. But as they were traveling, an Allied aircraft would strike that truck. And Joseph managed to escape again. But once again, caught. The Nazis finally got Joseph to Saint-Lô, but once they reached that city, the Americans would launch an all-night attack on that city. And there would be a reoccurring theme to Joseph's story that he's always almost killed by his own teammates. But once again, he manages to survive. I don't know how this guy does it. For the next few days, Joseph would be interrogated 20 to 24 hours a day, but he wouldn't give him any information, and he would use Biden's favorite line, "Son of a bitch."
Oh, son of a bitch.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
But he was no Biden. The Germans broke his face, beat him unconscious, and he would be hospitalized for a couple of days. Patriots live here. For the next 3 months, Joseph would be abused, beaten, starved, moved around from different POW camps, getting interrogated some more. And one time, they were transporting him in a box truck with 50 other guys, and an aircraft would strike that truck. And guess what? He was one of the very few that survived. I don't know how this guy does it. In September 1944, Joseph would be moved to a Russian POW camp in Poland that held about 12,000 Russian POWs, women and men. But as soon as he got there, he started planning his escape. 2 months later, in November, on a freezing cold night, Joseph with 3 other American POWs would cut through the barbed wire and manage to escape. They would get on a train hoping to go to Poland to meet up with the Red Soviet Army. But guess what? They got on the wrong train that took them to Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. One thing you guys never hear about is that Germany had a lot of Germans that hated Hitler and had an underground resistance group that was actually helping the Allies defeat Germany. So when they saw Joseph and the other 3 POWs with their uniforms on, they would grab them and hide them. But after only a week, the secret Nazi police, aka Gestapo, would discover them and arrest them. For the next 10 days, they would be completely tortured by the Gestapo secret police. Then the Gestapo would turn them into the German army, who would put them in a brutal prison camp. The prison camp was called Stalag 3, and as soon as Joseph arrived, he would be sentenced to 30 days in a small pine box, 4 by 5 feet, that you really couldn't stand up in or sleep or do anything. Fortunately for him, he had to endure only 7 days because a Red Cross person from Geneva intervened on his behalf. It would take a while for Joseph to regain his strength after all the abuse he went through. But once he regained his strength, he was planning his next move, his escape, and one night, Him and the 3 American POWs would break one of the walls and escape, only to be shot down and killed. All 3 POWs were killed, but not Joseph. Joseph managed to escape, but he was hearing the German Shepherd dogs that the Germans had released on him as he was running. Joseph jumped into a frozen river and swam for 2 miles. Then he would get out and go into the woods, freezing, and somehow he would reach the Soviet lines without freezing to death. There he spoke to Battalion Commander Alexander Samosenko, the only female tank commander in all of World War II. Joseph persuaded her to let him join her unit, so she gave him a gun and told him, "We're gonna liberate the camp that you just escaped from." So they got to that camp and destroyed it. And then Joseph would go to the main office and take the picture of him that the Germans took of him on the first day he was captured. Joseph continued fighting with the Russians for a couple of months, but when a German dive bomber blew up the tank that Joseph was in, he would be taken to a Russian field hospital. There he would receive a visit from Georgy Zhukov, the most important Soviet military commander during World War II, because he was intrigued by him, because he was the only non-Soviet person in that hospital. He would provide Joseph with paperwork to help him rejoin the American forces. And on February of 1945, Joseph would go to the US Embassy in Moscow, but they didn't believe his story. The ambassador told Joseph, "What are you talking about? Joseph R. Beyrle died on June 10, 1944, and we already had a funeral mass for him." The ambassador did not believe him at all. He thought he was a well-trained German spy, so he told him, "You need to go to Odessa and get verified." So Joseph would go to Odessa, but they couldn't verify him either. Odessa would send him to Egypt to get verified, but Egypt too couldn't verify him. So Egypt would send him to Italy to get verified. And finally, Italy was able to verify him through his fingerprints. On April 11, 1945, Joseph would return home, and his parents and his family were so surprised to see him because they thought he was dead. And 1 year later, he would get married in the same church that held his funeral service. God bless him. Joseph was given the Purple Heart, and in the 1990s he would receive more presidential awards from US President Bill Clinton and the Russian President Boris Yeltsin. Joseph would also be given a custom-made AK-47 from the guy that invented the AK-47. In 2004, Joseph would die at the age of 81, and his son would also become the US ambassador to Russia under George W. Bush and Barack Obama. I'm Ahmed Basile. Thank you guys for watching today's video. Please comment your opinion on this story, and please like, share, and subscribe. God bless you. I'm out of this joint.